May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts always be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord. Amen. Were not 10 made clean? The other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God, except this foreigner? It's odd, but I'm going to say that I think the healing miracle here almost is not the point of today's gospel. Now, it's important to acknowledge that Jesus heals, and as powerful as the miracle is, the healing of the 10 lepers, not 1, not 2, but 10, the message for this gospel seems not to be about the miracles of Jesus, but a little bit more about you and me. And Jesus praises the man who came back, who by all standards was pariah, who turned himself around and remembered to say thanks. So today's real miracle maybe is a human showing gratitude. I've come to think in my faith life that gratitude to God is how we have, and it's how we live true faith. I think gratitude might just be crucial to faith. There are some who say that gratitude itself is faith, or at least that faith is only possible through gratitude. Now, I'm going to go out and say, on the other hand, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that gratitude in its purest form is not highly thought of or sought after in our larger U.S. culture today. If anything, it's the last box checked in a transaction. Now, I know that we all were made by our parents to write thank you notes and to call grandma and grandpa and say thank you for. But I'm going to say still in the larger culture, it's moved into a category of not so much thanks. I'm going to say this even, for some, I'm sorry, the phrase I'm sorry and the phrase thank you simply show that you are weak. And in even less healthy segments of our culture, rather than it being an outpouring of true joy, gratitude may be expected as a sign of subservience. Case in point, recently, the leader of a very wealthy and very powerful nation, who I won't name, gave a pittance of support to a poor nation, a nation that was being invaded and systematically leveled. And the leader of this rich nation said to the leader of the besieged nation on global television that the leader of the besieged nation ought to be more grateful to him, the high and mighty leader of this great nation, be grateful to him more for the little bit of help that his country was receiving. That press conference clearly was hubris calling for subservience. Very similarly, the president of the WNBA was recently confronted on global television about how low the players' wages are in the WNBA. The person who was criticizing the president of the WNBA noted that even the WNBA's current rock star, Caitlin Clark, who has by popularity brought maybe millions of dollars to the WNBA, Caitlin Clark is making only a fraction of what mediocre male basketball players make. And the president of the WNBA reportedly replied, which she did deny, saying, She said that Caitlin Clark ought to be grateful for even being in the WNBA because of all of the outside money-making opportunities being in the WNBA has brought her. You see, sometimes being grateful is demanded by the powerful as a sign of the subservience of the disenfranchised. That is not what your parents meant when they made you write a thank you note to grandma, by the way. But it also seems in our culture that being grateful for what you have suggests that you're settling for less. To some, to succeed in our culture, you must demand everything so that you get the most of something. And when you say thanks, that simply means that's enough. Then there are those among us for whom gratitude is simply hard to do. Not because they are uber toxic capitalists who deserve everything because they worked hard for it. No, gratitude is hard for some among us, not because they are bougie or narcissistic, not because they will only accept the best of the best and all of it right now. Not for that reason. Gratitude is often hard for many who live with depression. The disease of depression alters one's brain chemistry, and it alters the thinking so that when people are depressed, we are less capable of feeling grateful. And unfortunately, in our culture, we usually think that the feeling we call grateful is the source from which we give thanks. Well, regardless of our politics, regardless of our sense of self, regardless of our mental health, it's not hard in our culture to miss that which is good and holy because it's so easy to focus on everything that is not so good. And the cycle of this thinking becomes a pattern we fall back into easily. I've come to believe, though, gratitude is very healing. I've come to believe that Thanksgiving is a form of faith, if not faith itself. And we're called to it, not out of moral demand by an exacting God. We're called to be Thanksgiving people because it helps with our own healing, and it blesses those around us who God gave us to live with. Again, Thanksgiving is a form of faith, if not faith itself. And I've come to realize, as a person living with depression, waiting to feel gratitude before I practice gratitude is perhaps like waiting for the sensation of thirst in hot weather before I practice hydration. Just as humans, our sense of thirst isn't the best indicator of when we need to drink water, then so as humans, especially when I am self-absorbed or depressed or demanding and bougie, feeling grateful is not the sign to wait for to practice gratitude. I believe that our faith teaches us about gratitude, but I really believe that gratitude teaches me about faith. Come to realize that God and faith are not transactional, regardless of what any leader of any mighty rich nation might think. God and faith are not transactional. God is not a soda machine where I put in prayers to get blessings out. And if I don't say thank you, I won't get any more. It does not work that way. It is not pray, get, thank. Repeat as needed. Faith in God, which is simply trust in God, may well offer the opposite as truth. When I practice gratitude, especially in hard times, it helps me see the good and the blessings that God already gives so freely that I would otherwise miss. And maybe then, when I see those, because I have been practicing gratitude, I can look forward to feeling grateful. which is made all the sweeter by the posture of openness and practice gratitude. Gratitude may not help me get blessings as much as it may help me see my blessings. Gratitude is a very healthy awareness to what life I already have and what life gives me. And it's helpful to see gratitude as well as love as a decision rather than a feeling. Sometimes I feel it, sometimes I don't. I should do it anyway. Being thankful for all things, no matter how little the things might be, no matter how much I believe that they are mine by divine right. As hard as it is, being thankful for all things can be a joy-giving exercise in being. I think it's also important to remember and to note that Jesus made the point that it was the oppressed person, it was the disenfranchised person, it was the Samaritan who was the one to come back so quickly with thanksgiving. He is the one who is closer to God. And I've come to realize that I appreciate more and I expect less when I am not living out of my privilege. It could be that that's why Dives, who we heard about the other week, the rich man, still expected Lazarus to serve him even in death. Maybe that is part of why it's true that the poor will see God. Maybe that is why it's easier to get a camel through the eye of a needle than a rich person to get to heaven. I appreciate more and I expect less when I'm not living out of my privilege, but instead out of gratitude. Being thankful, even if I don't feel it right then. Saying thanks to whoever I credit for the blessing at hand. Well, that might just be the simplest faith practice I can do. Maybe it's the most effective. Maybe it's the most beneficial. Maybe it's the holiest. God, teach us to practice the gratitude that we seek so as to find the love that you give. Amen.